The urinary leash. It's so interesting. The queue for the women's bathroom is always illegal. If you watch this video, you will know why it's so important. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you're all doing wonderfully. Hello from sunny Greece and my lovely background this week. Hope you all enjoy. This week I'm going to be talking about something called the urinary leash. And it sounds actually kind of dramatic. It sounds like we're all just being like tied down, but it's a good metaphor for what is going on. Basically, the urinary leash relates to women's bathrooms, queues for women's bathrooms, in general, just how women's needs to go to the bathrooms keep us tied down. They keep us on this leash, they keep us from going places and doing certain things, and it's actually like a huge issue. And it's so funny because it wasn't something that I really knew about until like a few months ago, and like when you start to look at it, it's actually like so interesting and I find it so fascinating. So I've decided to do a whole video on it today, and talk about some of like kind of the history behind it and like why it's such an issue, and talk about the reasons why women do actually need longer in the bathroom, and so many reasons. It's so interesting. And then talk about some examples of where it's kind of been taken into account, this kind of difference, and how it's been applied positively and how it can work for everyone. So let's get right into it. So in terms of the history, in terms of like buildings and stuff, like back in the day, the kind of Victorian era, it was like, first of all, women just weren't really in public institutions. Like if it was like universities or businesses or any kind of like public building, like a city hall or something, like women weren't really working there because we weren't really allowed to have jobs. We didn't really go and do business there because we didn't really need to, because again, we just were kind of looking after the kids and stuff. So there wasn't actually really a need or seemed to be a demand for women's toilets in these kind of institutions. So that's kind of explains why they weren't there in the first place. And it was also just kind of considered improper from what I've seen, that it was just kind of this weird thing, like, oh, why are women using the bathroom outside? Like, oh, it's like, again, kind of unfeminine or like whatever. So again, just something, again, completely arbitrary applied to women just for no reason, I don't know. But then again, from kind of what I've seen, it wasn't until women started shopping that female bathrooms were kind of introduced to shopping centres, so that we wouldn't have to be like rushing home to go to the bathroom, then we could stay shopping for longer. So honestly, again, it's kind of like a bad reason why they were introduced, so that they could just take our money and like so that we would just shop longer. But that's kind of seems to be one of the reasons why female bathrooms were then kind of introduced to like department stores and like bigger places. But it is so interesting to see that like all throughout history, women have been kind of on this leash or on this kind of almost curfew, because we literally needed to go like home to use the bathroom. Or like even like present day, a lot of women like don't drink a lot when they're out, or they just will literally try and hold it in. And like from what I've read, there's so many accounts of people doing that everywhere, like from present day back in history, of women just literally holding it in or just trying not to drink when they go out because there was just no facilities there for them. Another super interesting point is that a lot, I don't even know the figure, but a lot of people in the engineering or like architectural industries are male, and it is quite a male dominated industry, and so those are the people designing bathrooms and designing buildings, and so they're not gonna take women's issues or quite frankly women into the mix when they're designing things. Like they just probably think, oh, I need to design a building with bathrooms, and they're not really gonna have the bandwidth or have the wherewithal to take like social issues or women's issues into account when doing that. So it's kind of explains it, and it's kind of understandable, but it's also kind of like, no, because if you watch this video, you will know why it's so important. So to go into some of the reasons why women actually do need longer, there's so many, it's so interesting. It literally can range from things like, the obvious ones are periods. Like, oh my god, like where to even begin? Like, if you're using, say if you don't have any like tampon or pad on you and you need to use like those vending machines, I don't know who ends up actually using these, because wherever I go, those machines seem to be broken, which is a whole other issue, but whatever. If you're using those machines, that takes time. You're then in a cubicle, you know, like taking off the plastic and inserting it, or taking off an old pad, or taking out an old tampon, and just even kind of like freshening yourself up. That all takes time. Other ones include like, you know, going into a cubicle versus going to a urinal. Like a cubicle, you like literally just having to open the door, close the door, lock the door, unlock the door. All takes time. That's not taken into account when using a urinal. Things like clothes. Oh my goodness. How many layers do women wear? Like literally how many layers? We all tuck them into it. I'm not like, when I go to the bathroom, I'm literally, it's like I've been there for 7 hours. I'm like taking all the clothes off. I'm like taking off my bag, I'm taking off my scarf, I'm taking off my jacket, I'm hanging my bag up, I'm hanging everything up. I'm doing everything, and then it comes to tying it all back up. You have to zip up your jeans, tuck back in your top, put back on your jacket, put back on, like this all takes time, whereas men just go to the urinal, probably don't have the bag on them, they just zip, go, unzip. And when you think about it, it's so obvious, but it, like all these things, and it sounds so kind of like minuscule or almost like, oh, that's not an issue, but it, like, this time all adds up. Also, things like women are more likely to have kids with them, or they're more likely to have people that they have to care for, because women are primary caregivers still in our society. So that all takes time. I mean, oh my god, going to a bathroom with a kid, like, oh my goodness. Then if you're at things like concerts are a big one, or like festivals and stuff, like men can kind of, if they're really stuck, they can just go in like a bush or something. Obviously women can too, but there's a lot more shame attached. It's a lot more physically demanding for a woman to like squat down and do the whole thing. And so women are a lot less likely to do that than men are. So again, that like just already creates a difference there in who needs to use the bathroom at festivals. And even then, like, you know, sometimes you might see like the men's cubicle is free and you might go, oh, I'll go there, but like they could just be like more disgusting and like more dirty than the women's one, so that might turn you off then from going to it, you know. So it's just like, oh. Then really interesting as well, the other issue that women usually go to the bathroom together, and like usually this is like a safety issue, which again just isn't really a thing in general that men have to think about. Like, men are pretty safe wherever they go, just saying. Women have to think about that. They have to think about, you know, like, will I, on my way to the bathroom in a club or something, will something happen to me? While I'm there, will something happen to me? On my way back, will something happen to me? You know, if I'm leaving my friend alone in the club while I go to the bathroom, will something happen to her? You know, so like these are all things that women have to think about. So women need to go to the bathroom together. You know, you're waiting for your friend's waiting for you. That creates like more time for you in the bathroom, but also then more people in the bathroom. And like the more people there is in the queue, even the longer it takes to like get through. And it's all these things, and I find it so interesting, and like all this time adds up, and like it becomes a really big issue. Then even just think of like women who are pregnant. Like, oh my goodness, I haven't been pregnant, so I don't know, but like, can you imagine how many times you need to go to the bathroom when you're pregnant? A lot. Women are more likely to get UTIs, urinary tract infections. So again, you need to be in the bathroom more for that. So if you are, say, after having a baby and you have like incontinence, which is where you like can't keep it in, like your actual like pelvic floor muscles just aren't as strong as they used to be. So it's just harder to keep it in the pee, it's harder to hold it. So it's just all these things add up, and it's fascinating, and like men just don't have that, you know. They walk into the urinal, they just unzip, they go, and they come back, and it's so quick. And like one of the main points that I want to bring home, and I want everyone to start noticing, is the number of cubicles v the number of urinals. Typically, men's toilets and women's toilets have been approached equally and fairly, so they have been allotted the same space. Like if you're designing a building, like if you didn't think about it, like why would you give, you know, one toilet more space over another? Like why would, you know, you might not. So you might give men's toilets and women's toilets both a certain amount of square footage, whatever. I don't even know, I don't know anything about like space or planning, so I'm just saying square footage, and that might sound like I know stuff. But if you think about it, you're going to be able to fit a lot more urinals in a certain amount of square footage than you are cubicles in the same amount of square footage. So, and this happens everywhere, like, oh my god, once you start noticing it, it's crazy. Like, you're gonna have so many more urinals than cubicles. Therefore, so many more men are gonna be able to go to the bathroom at the same time than women. Like, it's just literally basic, like, math, or basic, I don't know, something. It's just so obvious. Like, why is that a thing? And it makes me so angry, because I notice it so much now, and I'm like, that is just so unfair. Like, right there and then, like 10, say, you know, say if it's a bathroom, you know, 10 urinals there, and only maybe say 6 or 7 cubicles. Like, that's just literally unfair from the get-go. So there's that kind of start it all off, and then there's all the reasons why women need longer in the bathroom to kind of add to it. So like you're like, and this explains why wherever you go, like a concert or in a bar or a club or anything, that the queue for the women's bathroom is always illegal, and like it puts you off. Like you literally end up going in a bush, or you're just like, oh, I won't drink water, or you're just like, I'm just gonna wait till I get home, I'm gonna suffer through, I'm gonna do something. And like it's just always like, such a pain in the ass. You're just always in denial about what's actually happening. Like, so there's kind of two issues here. There's the issue of like, from the very get-go, not having the same number of cubicles versus urinals, but then also the amount of time, more time that women need versus men. So like, you know, even if we had the same amount of urinals and the same amount of cubicles, women would still need more cubicles because of all our issues or just things that we need to do in the bathroom that men just simply don't have, or people with penises simply do not have. So on that, I kind of want to talk about the issue of equality versus equity. So equality is treating equal people equally, and equity is treating unequal people unequally. So basically, like, you know, there are a lot of people who might say like, oh, you know, like men and women are the same, we're the same, treat us equally, and it's like if we're being realistic, like, we're not the same. Like, biologically, people with vaginas versus people with penises, they're two different things. And so it is okay to approach those two things differently. It's not a reason to discriminate against people with vaginas or people with penises, but it is a reason to approach them differently. And so I think in the spirit of equity, it is absolutely, totally and completely fair and right to give women more toilets. It's just a simple fact of the matter. We need more time. We have more things to do. There, in most places, are probably less cubicles to begin with than urinals. And so this needs to be addressed, and I find it fascinating, and I think more people need to be talking about it. And again, it's called the Urinary Leash. It's just so interesting, and if you Google it, there are people talking about it. It's just so interesting. And as an example, just one example I found when I was researching this is Hong Kong. So back in kind of 2015, 2016, they introduced a law where now all new buildings that are built, there has to be 1.6 women's toilets to every one man's toilet, to take account of this problem. And I think that's amazing, and I'm like, oh my god, obviously it's just new buildings, they're not any old buildings that are being changed, but I mean, like, it's amazing, and I think it's so right and the fair thing to do. And like, if it's just so simple. If you look at any institution or any like public place you go, you'll always see the queue for women's bathrooms is so much longer, and I'm just like, why is no one talking about it? How have we not realised that something could be done about this? And I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it's unfair. I think it's completely right to give women more bathrooms. I think it is. And I think everyone else should as well. Obviously, this is just kind of in the developed world. This is very, like, in like developing countries, it is like so much worse. A lot of countries don't have like just basic sanitation. So like, obviously I know how lucky I am in the first place to have these kind of facilities, but there is still so much more that can be done in every society. You know, like, you hear, you know, girls in developing countries not even going to school when they're on their periods because there's just no facilities for them, you know, and it's like, it's so horrendous there. And we're still working on issues all over the world. And you know, it's like I say, you know, a lot, you know, there are differing levels of sexism all over the world. It doesn't mean we don't have it here in the West and where we're extremely privileged. It's still an issue everywhere we go, and it's something that can be addressed still everywhere. And we have so much more work to do. So that is today's rant about the urinary leash. I hope you found it super interesting. I find it fascinating, and I hope that, like, honestly, wherever you go now, keep a lookout. Like whenever you go to the bathroom, like, look at the queues. Look, maybe try and get I'm like a psychopath now. When I see like men's bathrooms, if I can try and get like a sneak peek in to see how many urinals there are, like, I'm crazy. But it's fascinating and it's really, really interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them down below. I would love to hear about them or anything. And I hope you all have a great week. Thank you. Bye bye.